Arm wrestling is simple on the surface. Two competitors, one table, and a test of strength. But beneath that surface lies a world of rich memes, hidden nuances, forgotten legends, and controversies you won't believe. Today, we're diving into the Arm Wrestling Iceberg, getting more obscure the further we go, and by the end of the video, we'll uncover secrets that not even the most dedicated fans know. Let's get started. Tier 1, the tip of the iceberg. This is where most people's knowledge of arm wrestling begins and ends. Mainstream names, basic moves, and viral personalities. But even here, there's more than meets the eye. Arm wrestling as a professional sport. Most people think arm wrestling is a bar game, or something two drunk uncles do at a barbecue. But it is in fact also a legit sport, with world federations, prize money, training camps, and elite athletes. There are international rankings, strict rules, and even doping scandals. Pros train as rigorously as bodybuilders, but think like chess players during a match. Every grip, angle, and twitch is calculated. Arm wrestling styles, plus the use of body weight in arm wrestling. There's more than one way to win an arm wrestling match. The hook, the top roll, the press. Each one's a different battlefield. Styles are shaped by biomechanics, hand control and leverage. And yes, body weight does matter, which is one of the reasons there's also weight classes in arm wrestling. When you watch a seasoned puller lean their whole frame behind a locked arm, it's not cheating, it's physics. In arm wrestling, it's not just about strength, it's about torque, technique, and timing. Over the top. The 1987 Stallone movie. It's cheesy, it's dramatic, and it put arm wrestling on the map. Over the top is half a custody battle, half a training montage, and somehow all arm wrestling. Real-life legends like John Brzenk and Cobra Rhodes appear as extras, and to this day, pros still joke about going over the top with their hits. For many, it was their first glimpse into the world of competitive arm wrestling, which means this movie has had a massive influence on the sport as a whole. The online influencers of arm wrestling. Another point of entry for people into the world of arm wrestling are the many influencers that have made a career in one way or another from the sport. Schoolboy, real name Alexander, is a Russian phenom. Glasses, a young look, no expression, and yet he crushes grown men with ease, which in turn has become his main shtick. Akimbo69 is part meme, part influencer, and part professional arm wrestler. Known for his meek-looking initial appearance, Akimbo became popular online by beating unsuspecting gym-goers on the arm wrestling table, but is an actual accomplished world champion in his own right. There's also the Whisperer, a guy who whispers during all his matches and wears sunglasses. Top roll is for boys, hook is for real men. Top rollers win by targeting the hand and wrist. It's clean, technical, and often strategic. Hookers, on the other hand, dive inside, bone to bone, tendon to tendon. It's brutal, raw, and exhausting. This phrase mocks the finesse of top rollers and glorifies the pain and grit of inside pulling. Of course, at the elite level, both styles require insane strength and technique. But the meme lives on. The many crossovers of arm wrestling. Apart from people that made an online career out of arm wrestling, there is a group of strength and fitness content creators that came into the sport after they were already famous. Larry Wheels, a powerlifter strongman and all-around fitness influencer, documented his journey from getting crushed on the table to training with legends like Devon Larratt. Larry was also one of the driving forces behind the notorious league King of the Table. Juji Mufu, the acrobatic bodybuilder, added showmanship and a fresh look to the arm wrestling scene, mixing his signature upbeat style with much beloved crossovers with arm wrestlers. Brian Shaw, multi-time world's strongest man, is getting deep into arm wrestling lately too, devoting quite a bit of training to it and even participating in high-profile super matches. He's also organizing an actual arm wrestling tournament at his next strongman event. There are of course others, proving that there is some amount of exposure to be gained from having an arm wrestling crossover in your repertoire. The weird terms of arm wrestling. Arm wrestling, just like any other sport and community, has its own set of jargon. If you're new to arm wrestling, don't be startled when faced with things like, let's get on the table and put the strap on, or I'm a good hooker, but I need to rise more and go outside sometimes. Yes, both these sentences make perfect sense to someone familiar with arm wrestling to any significant degree. Which brings us straight to Tier 2. This is where casual fans start to fall off. The water's colder here and deeper. The references here are sharper and more specific. Rampant pancake use. The ubiquitous use of PEDs at the highest level of arm wrestling is basically an open secret at this point. Sure, there may have been some self-proclaimed naturals walking amongst the elites, but they are few and far between. Chances are, your favorite athlete is on that special sauce. Athletes aren't always as candid while speaking about this though, leading to the code word pancakes being used. A term that is still used frequently and has even served as the name to a popular YouTube channel. The Armwrestlingarchives.com. This site is a goldmine. Quiet, minimal, but dense. It catalogs match histories, athlete profiles, and some historical imagery that would otherwise be lost to time. It's like the Wayback Machine for arm wrestling. If you want to learn about obscure regional tournaments from 2003 or see how someone like Travis Bagent evolved over the decades, this is your starting point. Its creator, Eric Roussin, has also been involved with the sport for decades and has been actively researching it for a long time. Top roll is for smart people. The counterpunch to top roll is for boys. This version paints the top roll as a cerebral style. It's about control, positioning, and patience. It's for people who outthink their opponent instead of overpowering them. And the truth is, it's not entirely wrong. Top rolling often neutralizes brute strength with superior leverage and hand control. It's not cowardly, it's calculated. Game of Arms. The short-lived AMC series that showed the gritty side of underground arm wrestling. Think reality TV meets Fight Club. Game of Arms followed regional teams across the US, building real rivalries and showing the mental and physical toll of the sport. It had drama, of course, beefs, road trips, and matches in suspiciously smoky garages. It brought arm wrestling to primetime and then disappeared after one season, but the impact still lingers, with many people saying this was their first time hearing about pro arm wrestling. The King's Move. One of the most controversial techniques in modern day arm wrestling. The King's Move isn't pretty, but it works. The arm goes as straight as possible, the body drops low, and a pin becomes a faraway dream. It's a defensive survival strategy mainly, and while some critics call it cheating, its supporters call it genius. People like Crazy George, Michael Todd, and Devon Larratt turned it into an art form of sorts. You can love it or hate it, it's part of the game now, and every top puller has to learn how to beat it. If you want to learn more about this move and the history of it, I actually made an entire video on this move. Cleve Dean. Living legend, now gone. Cleve Dean was a 6'7", 400+ pound force of nature. Farmer turned arm wrestling juggernaut. His hands looked like frying pans, and his power was absurd. He dominated in the 70s and 80s with sheer mass and speed, and continued to kind of dominate partly into the 90s. Watching Cleve pull was like watching a lumbering bear arm wrestle. Not a lot of finesse, but a ton of power behind a huge frame.
He's Cleve Dean, a pig farmer from Pavo, Georgia.
I love it. I mean, I'm the world champion at it. You gotta like it to be there.
What's the best part of it?
Winning.
The Indian arm wrestling scene. Massive, growing, and still largely invisible to the Western audience, India has thousands of arm wrestlers, deep regional tournaments, and explosive fan support on platforms like YouTube. Events draw huge crowds, yet the infrastructure is still developing, and international recognition has been slow. The cream is slowly rising to the top there though, and the scene is growing fast. As India becomes a talent hub, the West may soon be playing catch-up. The same also goes for most every other Southeast Asian country. Dennis pulled Devon's whole body with a table in 2018. This one's infamous, and it references a 2018 Zloty Tour match between Denis Seplenkov and Devon Larratt. In the match that would later become quite notorious, at one point Dennis didn't just pull Devon's arm, he pulled Devon plus the table. At least that's what some people saw. The raw force was cartoonish, it wasn't just a win, it was dominance made physical. For many, this moment sealed Dennis's reputation as one of the scariest pullers to ever grip up, and gave rise to one of the most popular arm wrestling memes in existence. Buckle matters. In arm wrestling, one side of the strap has a buckle, the other doesn't, and yes, it does matter, at least if you ask the majority of arm wrestlers. The buckle side is tighter and can restrict wrist mobility, which leads some pullers to say it kills hand control. Other pullers say it's just a mental game, but at the elite level, even a 2% disadvantage can cost a match. There's been talk of rule changes, alternate strap systems, even conspiracy theories about how buckles are assigned during a match. Might seem like a small detail to some, but in arm wrestling, the small things are everything. The rise of the press. The press is a vertical move in a way. You bring your shoulder behind your hand and drive downward, pinning with your body weight. It used to be rare, now it's used everywhere. As more athletes build insane arms and tighter angles, the press has become a go-to, especially in super matches where endurance matters. It's risky, if your elbow placement slips, it's Fall City. But if done right, it ends the match fast. One quick pin. With the rise of the press also came the rise of the flop wrist press, for those who weren't that good at the whole one quick pin thing, where an athlete will intentionally give up their hand and wrist while pressing. Engin! Talking about flop wrist pressers, Jerry Caderet yelling Engin has become a mainstay meme with the arm wrestling world, and is one of my all-time favorite moments. In a match at East vs West versus the Georgian Gennady Kvikvinya, Jerry Caderet was trying to press Gennady to the pad, but noticed his opponent was clearly elbow fouling. Despite being right in front of the referee's face, no foul was called. Jerry, being frustrated by this of course, proceeded to yell out some of the best lines ever, even calling out tournament organizer Engin Terzi.
Is that a pin?
Elbow!
No call.
Elbow! Look at his
Way
elbow!
off again. The elbow is way off again for
Are you
both of them.
kidding me?
Neither guy on the table.
His elbow's on the table.
Stop! Stop!
Where are you going, buddy? Another awesome soundbite from a notorious arm wrestler. All the way back in 2014, the GOAT himself, John Brzenk, was facing monster Michael Todd. During the match, Todd quickly drops under the table in signature Michael Todd fashion, but is quickly met by John, blurting out,
Where are you going, buddy?
John ends up winning the match. This line continues to live in people's head rent-free and is often quoted when someone is facing a King's Mover. Pulling John. This documentary is arm wrestling's holy grail. Pulling John follows John Brzenk, widely considered the greatest of all time, during what people thought were the latter years of his career. It's not just a sports doc, it's about obsession, aging, rivalry, and legacy. It introduced names like Alexei Voivoda and Travis Bagent to a wider audience, and it helped frame arm wrestling, not just as a niche sport, but as a lifestyle. If Over the Top was the fiction, Pulling John is the truth. By now, we're past the surface level facts and memes and into real arm wrestling knowledge. This is Tier 3. Arm Sumo. Arm Sumo, also known as Uresumo, is the Japanese equivalent of competitive arm wrestling and has been around since at least the 1930s. Tetsu Yamamoto, the founder of the first Japanese Arm Sumo Federation, has been an icon of the sport in Japan for quite a while, living to the ripe old age of 102. The main difference between classical Arm Sumo and modern Western arm wrestling is the lack of elbow pads in Uresumo, allowing the athlete's arms to move around the table more freely. In that way, it's quite similar to Devon's Freedom Arm Wrestling. What made arm wrestling popular in the East? What made arm wrestling popular not only in North America but also worldwide is a combination of different factors. One of the major driving forces was the release of the 80s cult classic Over the Top. The movie had a major impact when it made its way over to the East, exposing many people to competitive arm wrestling over there. Other things like excursions and local strength trainers, and of course gyms jumping on the opportunity, also helped spread the sport in quick succession. John Brzenk was not undefeated for multiple decades, or even 1 decade. John Brzenk is undoubtedly the greatest arm wrestler of all time, but with a legacy like that, it's no surprise that sometimes the myth grows larger than the man. You'll often hear people talk about John having been undefeated for over a decade, or even multiple decades during his prime. However, looking at his record, this is clearly an overblown charge. John competed far and wide, in hundreds, if not even thousands of tournaments. I don't think it diminishes the man's dominance by coming to terms with the fact that even he took some losses. What is accurate is that he stayed at or near the top of the sport longer than almost anyone in history, but the decades undefeated line? No, that's pure myth, not fact, and John himself has always been honest about that. Stem cells in arm wrestling. Several top-level arm wrestlers, Devon Larratt included, have turned to stem cell therapy to repair chronic injuries, torn tendons, shredded ligaments, nerve damage, and much more. Instead of surgery, they're opting for supposed regeneration. It's controversial, expensive, and still experimental. But when your arm is your weapon, apparently more than a few elite athletes will do whatever it takes to keep it alive. If you want to learn more about this subject, check out the video I made on exactly this topic. Enemy of the sport meme. In the same vein as canalization rat, enemy of the sport is a term used online, sometimes jokingly, to indicate someone as having opinions that are seen as being counterproductive to the progression of arm wrestling. The terms were first coined by East vs West founder Engin Terzi on his live streams, but have since started to live a life of their own. XARM. In 2008, Art Davie, the same guy who helped create the UFC, launched something called XARM. It wasn't arm wrestling, it wasn't MMA, it was both. And, well, neither. Two competitors stood across a small platform, one arm strapped together, the other arm free to punch or even grapple. Fighters could try to pin their opponent, choke them out, or just beat them senseless with their free hand, all while locked in place by the other, just like in an arm wrestling strap. Davey pitched it as the evolution of combat sports, built for fast viewing and mobile streaming. There were tryouts, sponsorships, even a web series planned through Machinima. The web series unfortunately never aired, the sport never caught on, and after a few brutal matches, it all faded out.
Was it arm wrestling? What goes on?
You know, it's got arm wrestling in it. It's almost like a chess move because you've got to keep your head about whether the other guy's going to knock you out. So you've got to be able to score the arm wrestling pins, you've got to defend against a couple of grapples, and you've got to avoid getting kicked in the nose with someone's foot. It's rough.
XARM became a punchline more so than an actual league, a lost experiment, a moment when someone tried to fix arm wrestling, or MMA, by turning them both into an abomination. Genetical outliers. Some pullers have strength, others have structure, but a rarer section of arm wrestler just fall in the genetic outlier category. Surely all of the top arm wrestlers have plenty of genetic factors contributing to their success, but for some of them, these are more pronounced and clearly visible. Take for example Jeff Dabe, or Matthias Schlitte, or Oleg Zok. For more on these athletes, you can watch this arm historian video I made on them. The actual origins of competitive arm wrestling. The first documented sources of actual arm wrestling are from the 1600s in Japan, according to my research at least. Organized tournaments, however, started popping up in California and the Midwest around the 1950s and 60s, which is also around the time the first world championships started popping up, and the sport spread fast, especially through the military and strength communities. Before that, it was mostly informal matches, no weight classes, no real rules. Fully fair strap, aka Devon strap. Most arm wrestlers favor one side of the strap, usually the non-buckle side. Devon Larratt has long advocated for a more balanced strap setup where tension and placement are equalized in order to solve this problem. His fair strap approach aims to remove buckle bias and give both pullers the same mobility, especially in high-stake matches, where a bad strap can swing the outcome of the match. By looping the strap in a different way below the hands, the fair strap was eventually born.
Half twist. This makes for a more symmetrical wrap through the middle. Okay, this creates a fair strap. If you want to hustle somebody in the bar, go underneath. Yeah, that'll potentially add.
With the old way of applying the strap, now called the hustle strap, quickly falling out of favor, the fair strap has been adopted by casual pullers as well as professional leagues. Alan Karayev, a powerful, underappreciated force from the early 2000s. Karayev was a Russian sumo champion who also crushed it on the arm wrestling table. Known for his size, speed, and insane hand control, he competed against the best, guys like Brzenk and Bajent. He didn't stay in the sport long enough though to become a household name, but those who know, Karayev was a problem. Top roll dominance in higher weight classes. As you move into the super heavyweight classes, you start seeing fewer inside hook wars and a lot more top rolling. But why? The simple answer is leverage, or arm length, or hand control. At higher weights, it's harder to hold someone in a hook against massive back pressure. Instead, pullers use their hand and wrist to crack open control early and finish the match fast. In the top classes, top rolling isn't just common, it's often the only way to survive a match. Neil Pickup, time traveler. Neil Pickup, as well as Devon Larratt and Sandra Shettis, sometimes get referred to as time-traveling arm wrestlers. This is because these three prominent figures in arm wrestling were embroiled in somewhat of a controversy. Neil, organizer of Arm Wrestling League Arm Wars, was organizing a super match between Latvian Sandra Shettis and Canadian Devon Larratt for his latest promotion. In the lead-up to the match, the two men would be featured on a podcast, where the two would lash out at each other, which seemingly led to Neil thinking of the match on the spot. Then when the day of the super match came around, after more hyping up by both pullers involved, members of the Arm Wars channel were faced with a surprise. The match was pre-recorded and heavily edited. The aftermath was that a lot of fans turned against both pullers involved, as well as organizer Neil Pickup. Neil said it was more than clear the match wouldn't be live, and the debacle has been all but forgotten, only being referenced in memes or subtle jabs online. Now we're getting into the parts of the iceberg that serious fans whisper about. Old beefs, hidden injuries, topics that might as well be banned, and stories that only pop up in comment sections or deep forum threads. You won't find any of this stuff in promo clips or mainstream interviews, but at the end of the day, it's all part of the sport. WAF/IFA drama. The World Arm Wrestling Federation, aka the WAF, used to be the only game in town. Then came the International Federation of Arm Wrestling, the IFA, created after a messy split-up in 2019. Accusations of corruption, bad governance, and favoritism led to a power struggle that fractured the sport's global scene. Countries had to pick sides, athletes got banned, and events were split. It's like a civil war that still affects where and how pullers can compete, even to this day. The big East versus West split. In the summer of 2025, a major rift formed once again between the Eastern and Western hemispheres in arm wrestling. Several Eastern athletes announced their leave to the biggest tournament in existence, East vs. West, after its founder, Engin Terzi, announced disagreements with the current owners of the league. The rift widened and tempers flared as personal calls and messages, as well as countless social media posts, spread like wildfire. Irreparable damage to relationships as well as the sport as a whole seems inevitable, with many athletes as well as fans taking clear sides.
It's wild to all of us, Brian.
It is the most turbulent thing I've ever seen in the history of the sport, really.
It's crazy.
The most turbulent period in the history. I mean,
why?
Rick, you agree?
Why?
It is.
What's going on, Neil?
Just super turbulent, dude. It's like flying through the clouds.
Arm breaks might happen because of compounded microfractures. Everyone knows arm breaks happen in arm wrestling, but the why isn't always so obvious. One theory is that repeated training stress creates microfractures in the humerus or radius, weakening the bone structure over time. Then, under sudden torque in a match, snap. It's not just a freak accident, it's actually accumulated damage. Some medical pros support this, though conclusive data is still limited. Some pullers say it's why they not only train muscle, but also bone integrity, whatever that means. Johnny Walker. No, not the whiskey. Johnny Walker was a dominant American puller in the late 80s and 90s, known for his brutal side pressure and quiet confidence. He wasn't flashy, but he was feared. A lot of newer fans don't know his name, but among veterans, he's one of the strongest arm wrestlers the US has ever produced. He beat Brzenk at one point, and his matches are still studied by serious pullers. In fact, just like Johnny Walker, there are many high-level arm wrestlers from times past that are arguably very strong and very technically proficient, even for today's standards. Monster Arm Wrestling. Back in the 70s, long before YouTube matches or supercard events, Monster Arm Wrestling wasn't a tournament, it was a machine. Literally. Invented by Jack Barringer, it was a coin-operated mechanical arm wrestling setup where two players would grip levers instead of one another's hand and try to twist them down until either of them won. No arm wrestling table, no refs, just torque. The device was installed in bars, arcades, and state fairs, mostly in Iowa, and it exploded in popularity thanks to beer sponsorships and weekend competitions. Out of this, an organization called the World Monster Arm Wrestling Association was formed. They even tried to build a league around the machine, complete with regional events, a rulebook, and plans for national franchising. Unfortunately, it never caught on fully outside of a handful of states, and the mainstream arm wrestling world largely ignored it. But for a few years, it was a legitimate circuit, complete with cash prizes, trophies, and even regional champs. Today though, Monster Arm Wrestling is largely a forgotten offshoot, but as far as I can tell, it still exists and they're still even organizing events.
Plus more. It's a phase, it's a fad, it'll never last, it's not a real sport. Don't tell these guys. I'm a 4-time national champion. I have my ring to prove it. Don't tell any of these guys it's not a real sport.
Travis versus Semerenko. Despite being in Tier 4, this one's all but legend. In the early 2000s, Travis Bajent, the brash, trash-talking American heavyweight, faced off against Alexei Semerenko, a quiet and powerful Eastern European puller, although maybe not so quiet on this day. The match itself was intense, but what really left a mark was the contrast in personalities. Travis was loud, flashy, aggressive. Semerenko, cold, calculated, silent, but also quite aggressive. The rivalry didn't last long, but the clash of styles and cultures made it one of the early East versus West flashpoints. Political tensions. Rumors have circulated that Levan Saganashvili, the dominant Georgian heavyweight, as well as other elite arm wrestlers, harbor resentment or tension towards Russian competitors. Some say it stems from personal beef, others think it's nationalistic, tied to broader political tensions between Georgia and Russia. Public statements, though, have been mostly diplomatic, but fans have noticed some athletes had a long history of avoiding or downplaying matches with top Russian pullers. Speculation? Maybe, but the distance is noticeable. The buckle does not matter, aka the Todd Hutchings theory. Todd Hutchings has publicly stated that he doesn't care which side of the strap he's on, buckle or no buckle. His logic: if you're strong and connected, the strap won't change the outcome. It's a direct counter to the widespread belief that the buckle side limits wrist flexion or compromises setup. Some say Todd's just built different, but others think he's right and that worrying about the strap is just some kind of mental weakness.
The buckle flat does not matter in real-world arm wrestling. And I would hope this would be comforting to you folks, because if the buckle mattered, I think you would demand people change things.
Love to see what you guys think about this one in the comments. The wives of arm wrestling. This term shows up in forums and comment threads, often half-jokingly referring to the spouses of high-level pullers, many of whom end up deeply involved in the sport. From helping with diet and training to getting involved on social media and even shouting during high-profile matches, the arm wrestling wives are often the behind-the-scenes and sometimes not so behind-the-scenes glue holding a competitor's life together.
Relax. Enough advantage. His elbow is off the front of the pad right now.
It's good.
Put it on the pad and keep it down. His elbow on the pad. It's off the
Referee's
Many arm wrestling wives also have tried their own hand at getting on the table, to various degrees of success. Tier 5. This is the place where even die-hard fans raise an eyebrow. Some of this is speculation, some is buried history, and some is so obscure that only lifers even know what it means. If you're here, you're not just watching the sport, you're living it. The first recorded arm break as of arm wrestling. The first recorded arm break can be found in a news article from 1851, New York, and reads as follows. 2 young men in New York in a saloon were trying the strength of their arms by clasping the right hand of each and resting the elbow on the counter, and then endeavoring each to force the hand of the other down. In the struggle, the arm of one was broken short off above the elbow, causing a report loud enough to be heard from one extreme of the saloon to the other. Bionics being used in arm wrestling. It sounds like sci-fi, but it's not completely out of the question, or at least it won't be. As prosthetic tech and biomechanical augmentation advances, questions have started to emerge. What if someone enters a match with a reinforced arm, a surgically enhanced tendon perhaps, or a bone graft stronger than steel? So far, no confirmed cases exist in sanctioned competition, but the concern is real. In the future, the line between human strength and engineered power might get a little blurry, and arm wrestling, just like any other sport, will have to decide where it stands. The arm wrestler who sold apricot seeds as cancer cure. Jason Vale was a former arm wrestler and health guru who controversially promoted apricot seeds as a natural cancer cure. He ran into some major legal trouble though with the FDA for selling unapproved treatments and making unverified claims. Despite building up a cult following, he was imprisoned and barred from selling the supplements. His case became a cautionary tale about pseudoscience and alternative medicine in the arm wrestling community. Seems to have been all but forgotten. Fake matches. Not every arm wrestling match is as real as it looks. Over the years, a few high-profile bouts have sparked debate. Were they legit or carefully staged for the cameras? From Devon Larratt's 2022 showdown with pro wrestler Braun Strowman, which looked more like a wrestling promo than an actual match, to Vitaly Lalitin's oddly passive match against training partner Silaev at AMC, suspicions have swirled. Then there's also Jujimufu versus Mike Aiello at WAL 506, which many believe was scripted, and was also later confirmed to be exactly that by Aiello himself. Even elite matchups like Alex Kurdecha versus slap fighting champ Zales raised eyebrows, with some fans calling it fake and embarrassing. While some chalk these up to showmanship or marketing, others see it as a threat to the sport's integrity, especially when stakes or prize money are involved. The line between exhibition and deception isn't always clear, and when it's crossed, trust in the sport potentially takes a hit. Roman Cindiliani. Once a rising star representing Georgia and later competing as a Russian in the 65kg and 70kg classes, Roman Cindiliani earned top rankings and international medals in the early 2000s and later on, yet his legacy is mostly defined by events outside of the table. Arrested in 2011 under a judicial alias, detained for over 2 years, and finally cleared in 2013 after returning to Georgia, only to find his status and identity stripped and in legal limbo. The accusations against Roman? Perhaps some of the most serious charges possible. A double unaliving. I don't think it can be understated how good this guy truly was at arm wrestling though in his prime, and how well known he was to his peers, with a lot of top pullers of the day coming out in favor of Roman's character. He didn't become a household name like Brzenk or Levan, but his story often gets whispered among veteran fans as a brief yet bizarre chapter of the sport's modern history. Roman, perhaps also known as Jambul Vibliani, has a story that reads like a thriller. Do some digging of your own and let me know what your findings are and which story you believe. There you have it, that's the bottom, and you made it through the entire Arm Wrestling Iceberg. A major thank you to Chuck, who helped me with the idea and research for this video. Also thank you to the remaining Armians and Fingerfolk, I greatly appreciate all of you. I'm sure I missed a bunch of things in this video, so let me know what those are, and maybe I'll even make a part 2. Arm Historian, out.